Awesome. It announced it to me. So now we're ready to go. We have the pleasure tonight of chatting with Dr. Michelle Frazier Trotman Scott, and she is the Director of Graduate Affairs and the professor at the University of West Georgia. She writes and presents on racial disproportionalities in gifted and special education, dual exceptionalities, culturally responsive teaching, and family involvement. She is also on multiple editorial boards, serves as a reviewer for multiple peer-reviewed journals, and serves and leads in professional organizations. And she was just chatting with us before we got on live that she's on the board of NAGC. She's also a part of the big convention that's happening in November here in Colorado. What she's going to be sharing tonight is titled Relevance Realized, and we're going to discuss the use of both rigorous and relevant lessons to engage students in daily learning. And I think that at this point, we can all use a little inspiration to get us going for the school year. So if you can help me welcome Dr. FTS, as she's affectionately called, we'll let her share her expertise with us. So thanks for being with us tonight. There you are.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I, too, am getting prepared for my first day of school. We start school tomorrow. Our students will show up tomorrow, hustling and bustling and ready to learn on the college level. And while we get excited about being able to come back into a learning environment, we know that we still have, there's going to be some room, some growth that needs to probably take place because of all of the different things that are happening. So I just want to sort of give you a synopsis of who I am. I consider myself an advocate. And I say that because I'm having an issue making my slides go. Oh, here we go. I consider myself an advocate, and I am an advocate for all things. I am a person who speaks up, who does something and says something almost all the time. And you know what they say about the squeaky wheel, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I am a squeaky wheel. But not only am I a squeaky wheel, I feel like I go and I dig and I process and I find the oil as well. So not only do I squeak, I also come up with some options. I help people come up with solutions. And I work with others so that things can become better. It's not good to always complain if we don't always have a solution. So I want to start by talking about just advocacy and how that all pans out. I know that we have a different type of, all different types of people that could be on this live. We could have teachers, we could have parents, we can have just caregivers in general. We can have community stakeholders. And so because of that, I want to just sort of talk to you about what you can do to become a part of that wheel. So the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Who, the W is who? Who is it? The teachers, we're the squeakers. Principals, the squeakers. These are the people that that can squeak and the people that you should squeak to. You know, if you don't like how something is going, if you have a suggestion, if there's something that you want to do that you think can get students involved and engaged, talk to your teachers, talk to your principals, talk to the superintendent, talk to the school board, talk to department chairs. If you're in higher education, talk to your deans, your provosts, your vice presidents, your presidents. Start speaking to people. The worst thing that we can do is say nothing. Or the worst thing you can do is to complain to someone who can't do anything. So what you want to do is try to come up with a plan of action so that you can reach out and make things happen. So that's the who, that's the W in wheel. Here's my oil, and I'm going to H. How? How do you do this? present the issues. When you have issues or if you have a problem, make sure that you are presenting the issues using facts. I always tell people to take feelings out of the way, because when emotions become a part of it, you start, I feel. That can't be substantiated. Use the facts. You may be able to say, you know, my child has not been able to log in for Zoom. I have not had internet access for 5 days. It depends on where you are. There have been blackouts. We've had people as you are advocating for your students. Provide a plan of action, like I said too. I haven't had internet for 5 days. It just got restored. Have your documentation, because that's always important too. Have your documentation, and then go to a teacher, go to whomever and say, okay, I would like to give my child or my student an additional 5 days and I can get this done for you. Sometimes it just helps us out. We were sort of just talking about, we're all sort of frazzled because we're trying to hurry up and get ready for school. Our brains are fried. If you bring the solution to us, we will gather you up, thank you for it, and we will probably implement it with your help even. And so that's a great thing. The next thing is E. Elicit, ask, offer help. Offer your service. If there's something that you do and you're really good at it, I like to craft. If I have time, I'll craft with somebody. I'll help them do certain things. If I can offer information, if I can provide them with a service, offer that too. Provide them with resources. When my children were in school, I would always go to Walmart when everything was 10 cents and I would just buy in abundance. I had too much. My youngest is in college now. And so I donated all of those school supplies to the middle school that my children attended. I sent all of those to the school. Donate those resources. That's how you can advocate. Remember, advocacy is not always complaining. It's also about providing substance and solutions and just helping out. The next E that we have is to establish some type of accountability. So once you have come up with your solution, once you have talked to someone, once you all have decided that this is what we are going to do so that our students can be successful, make sure that you document things down, make sure that you write it down, make sure that you hold each other accountable. Establish that accountability. A lot of times when you have conversations with people are more than happy to discuss and have these types of things and come up with all types of plans. But if there's no accountability, then we won't see any fruits of our labor. So establish that type of accountability. Okay, my internet was out for 5 days. We now have internet. I want to go ahead and give my student, we'll turn that in on August, if today is the 11th or the 10th, we'll turn it in on the 16th. And when do you think you'll have that graded back? When do you think you'll have that graded back for me? Oh, okay, I think I'll have it by the 20th. Okay, fine, I'll check back with you on the 20th. You're establishing that because you two have talked about these types of things and now you've established your accountability. Make sure you follow up as well. If they said they were going to be done by the 20th, follow up. Don't pester, but follow up. You know, I remember in our conversation that you said that it was going to be on the 20th. Did you have a chance to get it done yet? And they may say, oh, I forgot. Okay, I understand. When can I expect it? You know, being an advocate for yourself and your student. And then L. L is lead with a specific type of feedback. Thank them for the specifics. Thank them for what they are doing. Thank you for holding true to your timeline. Thank you for contacting me back. Thank you for getting back to me and letting me know that you have something that you can offer to our students. Thank you. be very specific so that they know what they've done, why, and they know how you feel about what they have done. This is where you can have the affect piece here. How you feel about how they've done. Doing that is something that you hope that they will replicate and continue to do that. Always use specific praise statements. This is for your students too. If you're a teacher and parents, do it for them. Thank you so much for taking out the trash. Thank you so much for washing the dishes, because then they'll remember to do it the next time. At least that's what we hope. Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what I'm talking about today. Just very quickly, we know that there are disproportionalities in education. The scales are unbalanced, and there are a lot of reasons why. Fiscally, we know that we have students that come from backgrounds and they make more money than others. There are issues with the achievement gaps. You have some people, or resources rather. I remember I have a background in special education as well. And so I remember when I was teaching special education, we didn't have books. And so the books that we would use would be the old books that they were about to throw away. And so we were using those books. The students were excited about having the books, but the resources, it was old, it was outdated and everything else. And so we have those gaps as well. And then the achievement gaps, like I talked about. Sometimes you may have students who have all the intelligence in the world. They have the ability to do all types of things, but they don't have that exposure. They don't have that exposure. They don't have the things that they need. They're learning out of old books. And so when they then take a standardized test, they don't do as well because they don't have everything that they need. We have resource gaps. We have resource gaps. You may not have a car. You may not have access to even getting to the grocery store sometimes, being able to do things and have taking heavy bags back and forth. You have to be limited in what you have. You have those types of things. And then you also have resources. I say golf because I never learned how to play golf. I've been on a golf course, but I've never played golf outside of putt-putt golf. And that's just an exposure situation. Doesn't mean that I don't know. I probably would know how to play golf if I was exposed. I would know how to appreciate something if I was exposed. And then just thinking about, we just finished the Olympics and there were so many sports in there that I had never learned. I had never, there was trampoline, you had handball, you had racquetball, you had taekwondo, you had judo, you had all these different type of things where people are excelling, and there could be others who could excel if they were only exposed. So we have all of these different things that are happening around us. And we ended up having the pandemic that went forth 2020 and is still rearing its ugly head for us right now. And that caused us an issue. For us, kids were in school, and then we got a phone call, you got an email, you got a robocall to basically say that Friday, March 13th is the last day of school. Kids need to take all of their, first it was 2 weeks, then it kept extending. It kept extending because we did not know. The pandemic turned into a pandemonium because it also, there was all different types of things. That's when things became extremely apparent for us. We were able to see that because of the things that were going on with this COVID virus, this COVID-19 virus, students were sent home. At first, they didn't have a computer. At first, they didn't have any Wi-Fi or internet. At first, they didn't even have food. But then they did rally and have some rally of resources that went on. People started thinking, they were advocating, they were thinking about the fact that these children are being made to learn at school, learn at home, but they don't have the resources. So then some of the things that were provided to them was food. You had the cafeterias that put things together and people were able to pick things up every day or once a week. You had computers that the schools were providing to the schools. You had internet that the companies were providing to the people free of charge. But you ran into some issues. Food was available, but if you didn't have transportation to go and pick up the food, you still would have that issue. And you also had issues with outstanding bills. If your bills were outstanding, then you weren't getting free internet, and then your students weren't able to go to school. We had an issue. We had issues, and it was very apparent when this pandemic went forth. And so then, in the midst of all of that, we're trying to teach our students lessons online and trying to keep them actively engaged and actively involved. It was difficult to do it in person. Now we're doing it online. And so we have to then pose the question, teachers, what can I do to make this lesson relevant? What can I do to pique the interest of the students? What information can I share if I'm a caregiver? What information can I share that would benefit the teacher and the student? Because again, remember, although you aren't the teacher caregivers, you're not the teacher per se, you are the teacher. You have more information than we could ever have. You spent a lot of time with them, and you can tell us the likes and dislikes and those types of things. And if you don't think it will matter, share it anyway. A lot of times for us, we think it doesn't matter. No one cares. No one, nobody will care. They may make fun of me, or they may not need that. You just don't understand. Share it anyway. Let us decide not to use it. And if somebody shares it with you, we can find a way to use it too. We're pretty creative. And plus we're gifted, right? Community, what can be offered? What resources are available? What history can be shared? You know, a lot of times we live in states and cities where there is a lot of rich history that students can possibly even just go around and just look at things outside. You know, we couldn't go indoors, but you can go outside and get these types of things. This is how you start to hook relevance into the lessons. And others, how can things be made applicable, relatable? How can it be made meaningful? For me, one of the things that I typically do is I typically make sure that I use analogies. I use analogies as a way to tell people or to make things applicable. So for example, if a student is trying to remember, I always think about that movie, Like Mike. It's an old movie, but you all probably know what I'm talking about, where the young man used basketball to understand geometry. Because he was interested in basketball, because he was able to apply all of the things that he needed to know as far as angles and everything else in basketball, it all made sense. It doesn't matter that they may not be using the term per se that you want them to use when you are teaching the information. That will come later. Get them hooked in, pique that interest, and then put it side by side, and then they understand, oh, that's the same thing as X, Y, or Z. Make it applicable. I always have understood too that if I try to memorize things, I can't remember anything. But I typically remember something about someone. Case in point, I know that this is Elizabeth on the screen with me. And I know that this is Elizabeth because I remember her name, I looked at her name, and I said something to myself to make me remember who she is. I remember there's someone else that's in my family circle that I love very much and is very close to me, named Elizabeth. So that's why I know that this is Elizabeth. Same thing. Make sure that you are talking to the students, figuring out what they like, figuring out what they want to know. And sometimes just interjecting a little bit of some of their background knowledge and that type of thing in your lessons will be helpful. Rigor is covered. We have rigor covered because our standards do that. It's the relevance. It's the relevance. And then when we think about even the cultural relevance, I always think about James Banks. Here we are. How can current events and situations be used for relevance too? We have so many current situations, so many current events that we can utilize as far as history, social studies, health, science, all these different types of things. How can this be used for relevance? Because a lot of times when we're talking to our students, they think that everything that we're teaching them is for old people and it doesn't matter. Make it relevant, and then it'll all sink in. But what I was going to tell you is that I like James Banks's multicultural levels of integration. You can have all the rigor in the world, but if you have not figured out a way to infuse multiculturalism into your lessons, then you have missed the mark. We've missed the mark. We need to figure out what it is that we need to do. Level one, or well, there's 4 levels, but there's 6 levels. You have no integration at all. That means you're just not trying. You're just teaching from the book. You're not trying unless it's information that comes to you from just straight from the book. You can have the contributions approach though. Typically the contributions approach is like holidays. We have Labor Day coming up. We'll talk about Labor Day. Maybe we can talk about the history of Labor Day. We can talk about why Labor Day was developed. We can talk about those types of things, but it's not deep, it's just sort of superficial. And if we're even thinking about racial groups, I think about just talking about Martin Luther King, or just talking about Malcolm X, or just talking about a female or a male or someone from the LGBTQ plus, anyone. You just talk about them, but then after that, you don't talk about them anymore. So you miss that mark, because then students will then begin to think that this person only matters when we're talking about this month. March, we're going to talk about women, but we still need to hear about women in January through December, right? October, we're going to talk about this. We need to make sure that we are infusing it all the way through. Level 2 is the additive approach. The additive approach is just adding information. It doesn't change anything. And I sort of talked about that Women's History Month. The students really fail to understand how predominant cultures and more minoritized cultures can interact with one another, and how you can show that they belong. A lot of times it's safe, it's politically correct, but it's more likely to be taught and discussed. Let me go to contributions approach again, level 1, really quickly. I know I'm about to run out of time. I have to hurry up. But contributions approach. I think of Cinco de Mayo too. Very stereotypical. People go out, Cinco de Mayo. Usually Mexican restaurants are full of people. Everybody eats tacos, drinks their favorite beverage or whatever else. But then when you look at it historically, that's not even how it all goes down in Mexico. But what that has done is it is really reinforcing those stereotypes. Now, let's look at the additive approach again. We're just sort of talking about it and then it goes away. Okay, we're going to talk about Black History Month. Okay, that's going to go away. We're going to talk about Women's History Month. We're going to talk about Asian History Month, and then it goes away. It's not infused to show that this is part of the culture. Instead, it's just like, I'm just going to add it in. It's a drop in. And once it's dissolved, it's gone. The transformation approach is the part of your curriculum that you can really change and make students begin to see things in a different way. Transformation is looking at things from different perspectives, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. For me, I always think about being transformative. How would you feel if These are some of the things. Write your response as if you were Elizabeth. Elizabeth was just telling me that she has some children, and she was just telling me that. How would I feel if I was Elizabeth right now with this pandemic going on and possibly having to go back into school with the mask mandates and everything else? How would I feel if I were her? Doing that sometimes just makes students think about someone else, how they are feeling, makes them you're right about it, and then that empathy comes. The affect is here in transformation. It's not that difficult to do. When you think about any of the lessons that you are teaching, no matter what subject you teach, you can always find a culturally different person or a person that you can talk about or discuss. Even in your opening, you can do a quick snippet. Elizabeth did it for me. She told you very quickly. She read my bio. So you knew a little bit about me. All right. So you know a little bit about me. Now that you've done that, you can ask a quick question. Take 2 minutes to talk to your neighbor about how would you feel if you were Dr. FTS and you had 3 last names. How would you feel? Could you bubble that? When things start to take place, when we're talking about the things that are happening currently, like the current events. For example, when we were dealing with George Floyd, that's when if students, we weren't in school, but kids were rallying and they were doing these types of things, and you heard how they were feeling. You heard them having empathy and having that affect came out for the mother, the daughter, the girlfriend, and all of that. You heard even them have apathy for or empathy for even the police officer's parent, the mom, the wife. I mean, there's just different things. When you transform just by having a small conversation, that sort of peaks and makes people think a little bit. That they may feel the same way that I do. They may feel the same way that I do. Going back to my Cinco de Mayo, what if I basically gave them the actual lesson? Okay, just really quickly, Google Cinco de Mayo, Google how it is celebrated in Mexico, look at the compare and contrast. How would you feel if you were a Mexican American and this is what you would see every May 5th? How would you feel? And maybe that would make people think a little bit differently. And then social action is just that. It's doing something about it. So now that we know that Cinco de Mayo is not what we make it out to be as Americans, right? Or how we do it as Americans, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to write a letter to a restaurant and basically say, perhaps you should have pamphlets of history, or maybe we can have some type of conversation with some people from some Mexican immigrants, or maybe we can have conversations with Mexican Americans and ask them how they feel and what do they suggest. Remember, we were saying, don't just complain, but have a suggestion. It's those types of things that we can do. And if you're able to do really any of these, the first level is the level that we try to tell people to stay away from, but at least that's something, that's a start. But to me, I really think that transformation is the place where you can just sometimes asking a simple question and not asking the students to answer the question, but asking the students to answer the question in the guise of someone else. That makes them think things a little bit differently. And that's how you can infuse multiculturalism into your lessons. That's it actually for me. Here is my, well, let's see, maybe not. Here is my email address if you want. If you want my email address, I have co-edited several books with some really good friends of mine. You've probably heard of us. This was the first one we did together. It was called Gifted and Advanced Black Students in School. The actual the foreword was written by the late, great Alexandra Baldwin. So that was the first one that we've done. We've also done Young, Triumphant, and Black. I did that with Tarek Grantham and Deborah Harmon. Young, Triumphant, and Black. This is really good too. It's an easy read if you have some students that you want to. These are stories that you can actually, they're very short, about 5 pages. And they have basically questions and solutions and outcomes. There's some things that happen, but everybody has a triumph at the end. And so this is a good book too, and it's only $17.95, so that's even better. I also have Gumbo for the Soul. This is Gumbo for the Soul. I did this with Donna Ford, Joy Lawson Davis, and Yolandi Silly Ruiz. These are liberating memoirs and stories to inspire females of color. And then here's a second helping of Gumbo. We did these as well. And these are inspiring stories. Now, I will tell you that these aren't for the faint of heart, because these are sort of some really difficult stories, but these women did come out at the top. But I'm just telling you, the Young, Triumphant, and Black, yes, I would say you can do that, without any issue. These, I would not do that with K-12, not with your high school students. Well, you probably could, but it's up to you. Read it first. And then I did this one too for my people that are in higher ed, faculty of color, navigating higher education. Up until up until this year, I was the only African American who was tenured and promoted in the College of Education. We had one more, but she's now not in the College of Ed. And so now and I was the first in my department, and now we have another one finally. So just navigating the whole thing. That's what this is about. Stories there too. So I think my time is up. I probably ran over time, but I really enjoyed sharing with you. I hope you gathered something from what I shared. And if anybody has any questions for me, I guess now is the time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shelli, for sharing with us. I have a whole page of notes here. And we have Melissa joining us on Facebook, who really appreciated everything you shared. She actually attended a school in a Native American community and could relate to a lot of what you were talking about as far as resources and exposure and all those things. She loves your reading recommendations that you just gave. Would the easiest thing to do be to just Google and type in your name and your books will pop up, or are they sold on Amazon? Or
Yes, they're sold on Amazon. So,
of course.
Yeah. They're sold on Amazon, yes.
So you can find all of those books there. But her question is, do you have any GT reading suggestions for Native American students? That's kind of a tough one off the top of your head.
It is a tough one off the top of my head. I don't have anything. But Melissa, I am sure that are you a member of NAGC, and are you a member of the Indigenous Populations Group?
We'll see what she says. Is that a really good resource?
It is.
Okay.
It's really good because Native American Indigenous Populations Group, it really started for that group because we know that the Native American population is a population that people say is disappearing, but it's really not disappearing. People are trying to erase it.
We just acknowledge it like we do other groups.
Yes.
This is the problem.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, and then also Melissa, if you wanted to get in touch with her, her email's on the screen. So that would be a good way. Or Nanette just wrote me, if you have a list of reading resources in general that you'd like us to share, you could send it to us after this. We'd be happy to post it on our website. So yeah, we'd be for any cultural group that is underrepresented that we could get reading recommendations for.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
She said she'll connect by email for sure. So perfect.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah. And we're waiting to see if anyone else has any questions, but I was just thinking from my notes, I really appreciated your piece about advocacy, because I think people in the gifted community can get a bad rap for how they advocate for gifted needs of students, especially parents. So I really appreciated that. If you weren't on at the beginning, you'll want to come back and look at this presentation on our website. But advocacy is not complaining. I love how, as you introduced yourself, you have to have ideas and solutions, and it's not just a complaining fest. So I thought that that was really important for all of us, because it can quickly turn to just complaints about things, especially when our world is so hard to navigate right now and unpredictable.
And I would consider myself a huge, I mean, I go to IEP meetings, I sit in on people's meetings, I look through things, I do all types of things for people who they don't have that voice, but I don't mind squeaking. I'm squeaking.
And then I was just thinking, this whole piece of relevancy. So last year, our worlds were turned upside down. We had no idea what to expect. I feel like we have a little bit better idea of what to expect, but there's still a lot of uncertainty as schools are opening. Some have made decisions that could change, and there's still, I think, a lot of fear and uncertainty around that. Yes. What do you think about this year as we head into it? What are your thoughts right now? It's a big question.
Yeah, it is. I tell you, I have a mask. I wear a mask.
Yeah.
And just my biggest thing is, if we must go back. And I really understand that people want to go back, especially because remember, I have special education background as well. And so students with special needs are really missing out when they are having to do things online. They're not staying, they're having a difficult time engaging and tracking and that type of thing of what's going on. But I really think for me, it's just, if you don't get the vaccination, wear your mask. And that should just be the mandate for it all. And I think even with that, there are different things that have come out now. You have the masks with the clear, almost like it's like a hard, clear plastic so that, for articulation issues, people can see and those types of things. I think it's just, it's a wary situation, but I think that it is that people really want kids to be back in school. And so for me, I just say, wear your mask, do everything that you need to do. Amazon is my favorite thing. I'm not an Amazon reseller or anything, but they do have those masks with the cutout. If you want to be able to speak and, lip reading and that type of thing as well.
Well, and it feels like in this tumultuous time last year, and we'll see what happens this year, students on either end are the ones getting forgotten, because we just got to hit the most that we can, the best we can.
You're right.
But I think with that relevancy piece, students are coming back this year with hopes and expectations and fears, and we all still have a lot of unknowns. I was just thinking about your connection of viewpoints. There's so many viewpoints to think through right now, even just with heading back to school. That would be a great way to get kids to share, how they're feeling or thinking, and then thinking from someone else's perspective so that we can all be compassionate in this unknown time. What is the right choice? I think we're trying to figure that out while we're flying the airplane, right?
Exactly. And I think it works. I think everybody's in the same place, in the sense of we've been separated. They haven't been in school. Some kids went back, but it was still sort of different. My college sophomore basically told me she's moving back to college. She actually went to school, but all of her classes, most of them were hybrid or online. Only a few of them were hybrid. But she says she feels like she's going to be a freshman when she goes back. She doesn't know anyone. Only people she knew were her teammates, because she ran track. She runs track. And so she doesn't know anybody. And so same thing, you hear these students who were freshmen, when they were freshmen, last year, they don't know anyone. They're coming back brand spanking new. You have people who left school as sophomores and now they're seniors, you know, and so there are all these different types of things. And I think there's a lot to really discuss and to navigate. And, you know, just the social and emotional needs of our students in general. You know, that's really a big thing right now. The platform is huge on that right now. These athletes are talking about it openly now. And so I think that we just have to be ready, even as teachers and personnel, to be ready for that. You know, sometimes we have to power through because we're trying to get these curriculum maps done and everything else. But if you have a kid that's having a meltdown because of X, Y, and Z, sometimes you just have to stop, put a plug in it, and tend to the student so that they can be okay. And then they can learn something. If not, it's a whole situation.
Sure. That's so important. We don't want to keep dragging students through lessons.
Right.
But they're not open to, because there's so many other things in life right now.
Exactly.
Michelle said teaching viewpoints is so critical in these times. So I think that your presentation on relevancy, we have so many viewpoints happening in our world about so many different topics. It's the perfect time to take time to do this with students and make sure that their voices are heard, and they also develop empathy for other people's point of views.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm just checking our chat. Any other questions coming in from anyone? Like we said, we would love to have a reading resource list from you after this that we could just post on our website if you want to put something together for us.
Okay.
But I really appreciate all this information. I think, like we were talking about before we went live, we could all use a little inspiration right now.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of unknowns and fear and differences, and it can feel like a lot to us in the profession and to our students. So I'm thankful. I think this was the perfect timing for something like this, as we're all gearing up to get going.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on Facebook tonight. We're so excited you joined us for this. Just so you know, next week, we have our very own Mark Hess presenting. He's our president-elect. He's also a part of SANG, and the title of his presentation is Your Gifted Child Thriving? So you won't want to miss that. You'll want to join us for that. But Shelli, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone else have a safe night, and we'll see you back here next week.
All right. Take care.